and representatives of FESA and participants for this particular program, event show and technical sessions. On behalf of Forest Department, my warm greetings to all of you, and particularly this organization for taking up this session and inviting the relevant departments and also the relevant people to make an awareness on fire safety. As told in the beginning, fire safety should start from identification, not only from prevention. Normally we say prevention is better than cure, but the prevention is possible only when it is identified. The prevention is possible only when it is identified. So the identification of hazard is very important for any industrial safety. The Factories Act, which was now replaced by the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, or the Manufacture, Storage and Import of Hazardous Chemical Rules 1999. This gives three levels of responsibilities for the chemical factories. The primary level is some identification of the hazards. The primary responsibility is identification of hazards in any chemical process, either during maintenance or handling of the chemical, storage of the chemical, transfer of the chemical, processing of the chemicals and various reactions, and during the maintenance. What are the possible hazards in these industries that should be identified, and the information should be given to the department. The information to be given to the department is a statutory obligation, but identification and dissemination of that information to employees, this is not only the statutory obligation, it is a moral obligation for all of us to save the life of the people. So unless we disseminate the information on what are the hazards prevailing in that particular industry and train the people to cope up with those hazards, and whatever remedial measures management may take to avoid those hazards, unless the employees working there are aware of the actual hazards, they may not appreciate your remedial measures. They may not be following the remedial measures, they will try to take the shortcuts. So that is the reason first step is the identification of hazard and dissemination of those hazards to all the concerned. Manufacture, storage of and import of hazardous chemicals also requires you to tell to not only to the employees, to the neighbors also. What are the hazards prevailing in this industry and what measures the industry is taking, and in case of emergency in that industry, what neighbors should do. So the information that is required to be given to employees may differ from that is required to be given to the neighbors, but neighbors at least should know what they should do in case of emergency. If some emergency alarm is raised, one kind of emergency alarm is raised, what they should do. Another kind of emergency alarm is raised, what they should do. At least this information should be disseminated to the neighboring public through the local administration. This is what the MSAC rules specifies. This is the first tier responsibility. The second tier responsibility is the preparation of on-site emergency plan. In preparation of the on-site emergency plan for meeting the emergency, firefighting is one of the important aspects in that. Normally, most of the 90% of the emergencies that prevail are due to the fire only. And when it comes to the fire, I remember one incident almost 20 years back in the same Jeedimetla area. There was one small fire in one chemical factory in phase 1 I think. And in phase 4, in engineering industry, while lifting some metal sheet by workers manually, it touched the overhead line, and 5 persons died in the incident. 5 persons died in the incident in Jeedimetla phase 4, almost 20 years back. And on the same day, there was an incident in chemical factory in Jeedimetla, a fire accident. No injuries, which was contained in 30 to 35 minutes because the fire station is nearby and the people are active, they could control the fire within 30 minutes. No injuries, not major property damage. But the next day newspaper highlighted the fire incident, not the death of 5 people in an engineering industry. That is the reason we should be more, this is not only for the public awareness, we need to be more careful regarding the fire, because the kind of accident that can take place in an engineering industry or with some other equipment or some other thing, it will be limited to one place only. It will be limited to that particular partner. It may be limited to that particular person or that particular machinery. At the most, that particular black act section. But a fire accident, not only it is one limit to the particular place, but it extends to the whole factory. Not only the whole factory, sometimes it may extend to the neighbors also. That is the reason we should be more careful in tackling the fire. For that, the identification of hazard, taking the remedial measures for prevention of those kind of hazards, whether it is a static accumulation or short circuit, whatever may be the reason for the fire, we need to identify and we should equip ourselves with required equipment. Fire Act is there. They specifically mention what are the required provisions to maintain. Earlier under Factories Act, we used to have one section, Rule 61, but because there is a special act that prevails over the factories rules. But now with OSH code, state government is not prescribing any rules for the fire. The state government is not empowered to prescribe the rules on fire. On all the safety issues, under OSH code, central government is empowered to issue the directions. So whatever factories rules earlier there, giving the directions on safety, almost 90% of these things central government is going to prescribe to have a uniform standards of safety throughout the country. In that, they may prescribe some fire safety norms also, but what are their norms? Definitely our state government fire safety norms will be more useful for us, and we have to follow whatever those norms are there, whether it is applicable to them or not. I think new rules, they may be made applicable to all, that is a different issue, but we have to take it in spirit, not only whether it is a legal requirement or not. As I told you, the maintenance of safety, maintenance of the safety of the people is not a mere statutory obligation. It is a moral obligation for us, and it is an obligation for our sustainable running of the country. If there is any, last year, you might be knowing there was one big incident in the state of Telangana. Till now the factory is not open. Till the factory is in the closure stage. So this kind of things will happen if something happens, untoward incident takes place in the factory, particularly in a pharma factory which is susceptible for more fire incidents because of the handling of flammable material like solvents or the new hazards. Normally we know the dust hazards happening somewhere else, XYZ places, but I think first time we have had a major incident occurred due to the dust explosion. That too in a unit which neither we can call completely chemical factory, completely pharmaceutical factory.